I used to use back in the days when laptop batteries didn't last a super long time and there wasn't Wi-Fi everywhere, is I would go to a cafe with my laptop and no power adapter and knock it on the Wi-Fi. And I'd have a little sticky note with like the 1 to 3 things I had to get done while I was there. So typically where I see business owners get blocked, growing from a solopreneur to what I call a true business owner, is in a few areas. One of those, but here's the really important part. Finding out if people actually want to solve the problem with the solution you have in mind.
You have a quote I've never heard before. The secret of getting ahead is getting started. The secret of getting started is breaking your complex, overwhelming task into small, manageable tasks, and then starting on the first one, Mark Twain, right? And that's kind of what we're speaking to. Like, no matter, like you said, what size of the business it is, like really just get started and don't fear the unknown. Yeah. Just put yourself out there. Right?
Yeah, I mean, we've probably all heard the phrase like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
What if the way you've been told to grow your business is exactly what's keeping you stuck? Jeremy Shapiro has spent over 25 years helping entrepreneurs break free from burnout, uncover hidden opportunities, and scale in ways that actually create freedom. He's a serial entrepreneur, a mentor to business owners around the world, and the author of the brand new book, Your Business Growth Playbook. In this episode, Jeremy shares the proven strategies to get unstuck, scale profitably, and design a business that fuels your life instead of draining it. If you've ever felt stuck in the grind, this conversation might just change everything. Hey there. Look, my hope is that the ThriveWell Journey meets you exactly where you are and helps you rise into who you're here to be. It's 2025, and this is your year to thrive despite what the world is throwing at us. And our desire is that our conversations inspire you, bring clarity, and give you a reason to breathe deeper. So our ask is that you take a moment to subscribe, download the episode, and follow us on your favorite RSS platform. Your support doesn't just help the show grow, it helps build a space that's rooted in your evolution. And that means everything to me and the TTJ team. Now, if you're ready to go beyond the episodes, come join our private ThriveWell Journey discussion group on Facebook. We're walking through a 22-week series built to anchor each week in intention, purpose, and meaningful connection. I do so look forward to hearing your voice and can't wait to see you in the group. But for right now, let's get into it. So welcome back to the ThriveWell Journey. I just want to first welcome Jeremy Shapiro. He is coming back for the second time here on the ThriveWell Journey podcast. Jeremy, we just had an amazing conversation. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for inviting me back. It's great to be here and see how well and wonderfully the podcast has grown.
Thank you, man. And thank you for just who you are and the things that you're showing up for in the world for entrepreneurs and people in general. You are a gift, and I appreciate that. And before we dive into business growth and strategies that you have to share, I really want to ask something of everyone who's listening, which is, what does thriving look like for you right now in your work, your health, or your relationships? And if that's a question that you can't answer, just ponder on that as we go through the conversation with Jeremy. And, as we always start with an intrinsic kind of reflection question, Jeremy, how do you personally define thriving, both in your business and in your just life?
It's funny. We do something in our family and in business and at the table and with friends and before vacations and everything, which is this one question that's so close to what you're asking right there, which is, how do you define success? And we picked it up from a friend of ours years ago when we were going to be going away to a lake cabin for a weekend. And it was such a good question because when you figure out what success looks like, you can know if you've hit it. And if you don't have that conversation ahead of time, then at the end of a trip or the end of a meeting or the end of a conference, the end of a, whatever, you can walk away and start ticking off the boxes of what didn't happen or what you missed or what you wish could have been. And so when you don't know what you want or what success looks like, you'll never know if you're there. So I just want to acknowledge you asking that great question of our listeners and of me. It's so good to know what that means.
Yeah. And what I gather from what you just stated is like success looks different for everybody. Like you have to define what that is for you. And it just looks different for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it could be a matter of, one person saying, look, it's important to me that, I get a hike in, and someone else is like, I want to make sure, we have big family meals together. And someone else says it's important we get to, play games. And once you know that, if you make that thing happen, everyone's had a great time. And everything beyond that is, it's gravy, right? And if you're going to a conference, right? When was the last time you went to a business conference with no plan? And you walk out afterwards with ideas and feeling inspired, but like, was it a success, right? When you go in with a plan of like, look, I want to, meet 10 new partners and, I want to, find 30 new prospects or whatever it is, right? You then know what it looks like and how to get from here to there. Mm-hmm. So it's great. But to answer your question in terms of how do I know what thriving looks like? For me, a lot of it comes down to a measure of how time is used and how restricted or unrestricted my time in a given day is. And so thriving for me means having that optionality and knowing I get to choose what my day looks like, and build the business and build whatever else I'm doing around the schedule that matters for me.
Around the schedule that works for you. So in our culture, and I would say the American culture, they people have tied success to burnout. How can we separate the two so that, like we don't have to be burned out to acquire success for ourselves? How do you separate the two?
There's a lot of folks who I think have an identity with how busy they are, right? And we've all got these friends. You have a social conversation with them and they just go into list mode of all the stuff going on and how quadruple committed they are at any given time. Mm-hmm. And like on the one hand, that seems like a badge of pride, right? To be able to show I'm so busy, I'm falling apart at the seams. Right. Mm-hmm. But when you think about the inverse of that, like how good of a job do you think people are doing at any one of those things? Right. If you're with your kids and also looking at your phone and half responding to an email while also on a call, like, are you fully present on that call? Are you present with your kid? Are you writing a good email? Like you're probably doing a terrible job at all of those things at the same time. So if instead we become less busy, but more intentional with how we spend our time, right? And we do simple things. We talk about like time blocking, right? And being undistracted for a period of time with a single objective of what you want to get done in that time period. Mm-hmm. You can do meaningful work in bite-sized chunks with every one of those, quote, shipping or delivering value, right? Mm-hmm. So, we can be busy and wear that as a badge of honor, right? Or there's a lot of folks who are quiet about what they're working on. And they're intentional about what they're working on, and they're not wearing that as a success symbol, but they're successful in their own right. And I think for a good reason, because they've chosen to take back control of the time and how they spend their time.
So a couple of things showed up for me when you said that. There are what I started to do was on Sunday nights before my week starts, even though it really doesn't matter because a week is a week is a week to me, right? Monday's a Monday. It doesn't like it's not the beginning of the week or whatever. But on Sundays, I really begin to block out how my days go. Because I have businesses, what I want to do is create spaces to where I'm intentionally focused on that specific thing at that time so that I'm not overlapping, the businesses or whatever it is, but just mentally, I'm focused on what that one thing is. That then gives me space just to be freed up for that moment. So that I'm not thinking about 12 different things at one time. That's my space. That's my block for that one thing. And then I focus on it. And it helps me out. It helps me out completely. What do you say to people that, that are not necessarily, they don't, what would you recommend for people to do if they have multiple things going on at one time so that they can begin to live that hustle-free burnout kind of life?
The idea of trying to balance a bunch of the plates, or in our case, right, multiple businesses, is a very possible thing, right? So I've been in business now almost 30 years as a serial entrepreneur, always in the service of other entrepreneurs. I've almost always had multiple businesses running at the same time, right? That's sometimes different teams of people that need to be managed, different, customers, different projects, different product plans, different everything between the businesses. And there are a lot of ways to approach it, but the cognitive load of shifting between tasks is high, right? You think about what it takes to ramp it back up and get your mind focused on the new task at hand, and then how all that bursts and goes away when your phone dings or, someone walks in your office or something comes up, right? And then you shift gears to what that is, and that change time is taxing, right? So when we get in that focused time on one thing at a time, we do a better job overall. And more importantly, we can get the more meaningful projects done. So when we talk about like prioritization or categorizing what needs to get done, there's a few ways to approach that. But if we use like the Eisenhower matrix, for example, one of my favorites, right? One of the categories that you think about is the do now, which is where most entrepreneurs live. This is the firefighting mode. Everything is always, the growing list in front of you and you have to do it all. But one of the other categories, which is a do later category, is really where the bigger opportunities are. Those are the things that can change and grow the business, but the things you've got to schedule, right? You don't come up with your bigger strategic plan for the year in little 30-second bites of time. That's something that needs concentrated focus time. You don't come up with your next product plan in little bite-sized pieces, right? So when you think about the things that really move your business forward, that takes dedicated blocks of time. So just like you're doing, it's a practice I use as well, which is blocking out the time ahead of time and figuring out in this meeting I have with myself, right? What is the 1 to 3, I'd say max things I want to get done. And so a strategy I used to use back in the days when laptop batteries didn't last a super long time and there wasn't Wi-Fi everywhere is I would go to a cafe with my laptop and no power adapter and knock it on the Wi-Fi. And I'd have a little sticky note with like the 1 to 3 things I had to get done while I was there. And so the distractions of the office or home or anything else were gone because I was in a physically different environment, right? I also knew what the definition of success was. So I knew what I had to get done. And I also had a limited time window before the battery died and or before I just had to get home or the cafe closed or whatnot. So it was, a self-enforced do or die moment of what had to get done during that time. So at some point you've got to ship it. As business owners, like the good news is we're our own boss. We can call the shots. We can set the deadlines. But the challenge is we're our own boss and we can move the goalpost and change those timelines.
Right. That part.
And so many business owners get used to this idea of like, oh, I didn't get it done. I'll just try tomorrow.
Right.
And that undone to do item just keeps getting kicked down the road. But if you had a flight to catch, you'd make that flight, wouldn't you? Right. If you had a meeting with someone, you'd show up to that meeting. So somehow we're able to show up to things when there's an external place, person, accountability, and so on. And yet we don't have that self-respect to do that for ourselves. And so start flexing that muscle and building that habit of setting out to accomplish a certain thing in a certain block of time. And then you become a machine. You become used to it. You build that habit of setting a place and a time and a task and getting it done. And it's the important work, not just the fire of the day.
Right. Show up for yourself, right? Bring the integrity of your word, not only to help other people, but for yourself. Like bring integrity for you and show up for you so that your business can move forward and grow as a human being, right?
Yeah.
The question I really want to ask you is this. Well, there's a lot of questions I'm going to ask you in this conversation, but you've worked with entrepreneurs and this is your deal. You are an entrepreneur for entrepreneurs. And I find myself almost finding myself falling in this trap, which is, you see solopreneurs fall into when they're just trying to grow their business, and they're always in it. What do you see as the most dangerous trap for solopreneurs that are trying to grow their business and become entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So being a solopreneur, by the way, is great, right? And that's a really good starting point in your business. Now, can you grow to a 7-figure business as a solopreneur? Like, yes, you can, but that also means everything's going to block on you. So typically where I see business owners get blocked, growing from a solopreneur to what I call a true business owner, is in a few areas. One of those is in this idea of letting someone else do something, whether it's a VA, a part-time contractor, a part-time employee, full-time employee, a team, whatever, right? Is this idea of letting go of certain things that you're just used to doing or that you should do and allowing someone else to do those on behalf of the business so you don't have to, right? So sometimes there's a fear of letting go. Other times it's just a lack of systems. If you haven't documented how to do the things that you do, you might not get the result you're looking for when someone else steps in to do that, right? Yeah. So step one, I usually advise folks is to start to document, like, where do you spend your time? What are the repeatable things that you do again and again in your business that maybe you don't have to block on you, right? So for many business owners, that can be things like bookkeeping, right? Customer service or customer support, onboarding, right? Any of these kind of things that are the same again and again and again, you can document down. So first step is to just document what it is that you're doing. Then follow your own system and you'll realize the things you're doing you forgot to write down or the things you wrote down that you don't actually do and so on. Yeah. And then you can bring someone on and hire them for the role of running that system. When you have hires or team members you bring on and it's unclear to them what they're even trying to do or they're supposed to do or what that measurement of success is, like we were talking about, that makes it difficult for them to know how they're doing what they're supposed to do. But if during the hiring process, you're going over what the systems and responsibilities and definitions of success are, they'll be able to know if they're doing a good job. You'll be able to know if they're doing a good job. But more importantly, they'll be able to get a consistent result. And you won't be the one responsible for doing that every single day. That starts to move you towards that freedom so that your business can grow and be less dependent on you. And you get to step out of that hustle space that maybe you're used to being in as a business owner.
Right. You had said freedom. I have a question here. What can anyone learn from entrepreneurship about designing a life that supports freedom and purpose? Think about that. But here's another area I want to go into. So with business now, you have a lot of people who start the business. Back in the day, you would start a business with a business plan. Now, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that I know of, and partly me, that really have an idea. You kind of write it down and you try to go after it, but there's no true business plan, right? And I'm talking really in the world of, digital businesses and, online businesses and things like that. Before we get into your book, what do you say to those people who are entrepreneurship minded, but they don't know back in the day when we used to create a business plan, an actual business plan to draw from to grow our business?
So the plan is important. It doesn't need to be as formal as a 20-page slide deck, right?
Back in the day,
right? Personally, I'm a fan of just organizing my thoughts in a document, right? Just a bullet list, a few indentations, just getting stuff out of my head and into a document helps me to just organize what I'm going after. But I'm really a fan of shipping an MVP and delivering some value as early as possible. So my development process is typically, I have a harebrained idea. I think it sounds neat. I want to buy it myself. I get all excited as us entrepreneurs do. And I get the ideas down on paper and then I do a little research to see what the marketplace is like. And sometimes I find there are businesses that serve that space I didn't even know about that would totally solve the problem. They're doing a good job. So that tells me, hey, it's not a great business idea. It's being solved. I can go pay someone else and get the solution I want.
Right.
Other times I'll see that their company is trying to solve it and doing not a very good job, or they don't have the angle I'm looking for. And so that tells me there might be an opportunity. Ideally, I find out that no one's solving this and it's an unsolved problem. And that's really great because that can be a good opportunity. But here's the really important part. Finding out if people actually want to solve the problem with the solution you have in mind. And so, I think back to, there was this really high-end mastermind group that I was part of. And I had an idea for a business that would solve a need that my business at the time had. And the question was do I go start this new business to solve my current business's plans? because that would like distract me from my current business. And maybe it's not a great idea. So who knows? So there informally, literally back of the envelope idea, a few notes jotted down, I started asking around. Like, here's what I'm thinking of doing to build for myself. Like, does this have legs? Is this a good idea? And the feedback I got was like, no, it's a terrible business idea, but like, I would totally buy that from you. When can I start paying you for that solution? And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm hearing two things, right? The key complaint from folks was that it was too small of an addressable market, which was fair. It was a really, really small niche. However, like most of these folks were in that niche. So what I was hearing was I was going to be solving a problem that a bunch of us had. It just wasn't a huge market. It wasn't going to be, a 9-10 figure business.
Here on the ThriveWell Journey, we talk a lot about not just surviving, but thriving. And a big part of that for me has been understanding my health on a deeper level. That's why I partnered with Live Good and brought it under my company, Orion's Health. Not just because I believe in the products, but because I've seen what they can do firsthand. I've walked through some hard health chapters in my life, including cancer and a kidney transplant. And I know what it feels like when your body's working against you. That's why we're offering 2 free tools that help me and can help you too. First, go to myfreehealthreport.com/Orion's Health. Take our quick health questionnaire and get a personalized report created by Dr. Ryan Goodkin, Live Good's Director of Product Development. It's clear, actionable, and totally free. Second, visit myfreedetox.com and get a free chlorophyll and zeolite detox bottle with your first product order. It's a gentle, natural way to clear out toxins and start fresh, something I personally use and stand behind. This isn't just a sponsorship, it's part of my mission through Orion's Health to help people thrive in body, mind, and spirit. Of course, always consult your physician before starting any new supplement or health regimen. Your body is unique, and your healthcare provider should always be part of the conversation. The links are in the show notes. Now tap in and take your next step toward thriving.
But it absolutely would have customers. And so I knew I had people who'd be interested in beta testing or giving early feedback. So I was able to ship a really early version that I could start using and these folks could start using and get it to the point where it was ready to share with the world. And the day I launched, all those existing beta customers of mine were able to become paying customers. So before I had any expenses for the CRM or for marketing or any of these things, before any of those expenses came due, I already had new revenue coming in the door from customers who've been using the product since before it was ready for release, right? So I tested the earliest version possible out to validate it by doing some research, right? Revising the product based on what the market was looking for so that when I launched, it was cash flow positive since day one, which is a theme. Almost all my businesses, I look to find how I can be cash flow positive on day one of launching the business. And the only way you do that is by shortening the cycle to test your idea out, to validate against real potential customers, and then see, is that true based on if they're actually willing to, for real, pay for the idea you have and get it off the ground. And that's a model I've used again and again.
Yeah, that's a great approach. I mean, you've been doing businesses, what, you're like 10?
High school. I had my first, I would say, real business then, meaning generating revenue, building out a team, scaling up a business, systems, and all the things we were talking about. But ever since then, yeah, almost 30 years now.
Yeah. So that's a great approach for people because, I think people get the idea of want to start a business. They don't really know if it's a problem that should be solved. It may be a great idea or something some people may want what they're trying to create, but it may not be a business itself. So testing is a really, really good, solid approach to, figuring it out for themselves.
And I want to differentiate there though. There's a difference between focus groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
And true testing, right? The difference is like a focus group or asking informally gives you a signal you're onto something. Someone saying, oh yeah, sure, I would buy that. Or, oh, that's a valuable idea to me. That is a good positive signal you're on the right track, but that's still very different than when someone puts a credit card down and actually transacts with you. So for me, that's always a good signal. I had a business, even before the one we were just talking about, where we were getting the website online. We weren't even ready to accept credit cards and take orders. And we had people like buying, and we weren't ready to start delivering. And so that was this really encouraging signal of people were already starting to buy from us, and the product wasn't even fully launched. The website wasn't even fully online. To this day, I still have no idea how they even found us. But we were getting real customers who were then circling back after purchasing, hey, like, when can I get access to the service? And, it was great to get that early validation. So look for not just the market research question, but actual customers to transact and buy. That is how you know you've got, an interested customer base.
There you go. You have been an employer, not employer, but an entrepreneur, for entrepreneurs for quite some time. And one of the reasons why you're here today is because you've been working on your book, and it's not quite out yet, but you've been doing something that I've kind of been a part of, and you've been really getting feedback. And I'm shifting this way because this is basically what you're doing with the book, as you just described, getting feedback and really creating something that is valuable to people, entrepreneurs, and people alike. And this is the Your Business Growth Playbook. And I'm going to look at, before I go into some of the things you have, because of the way that you approach putting your book out, you've gotten some feedback. One from one of our mutual partners that we know, which is Alex Sanfilippo from Podmatch. And it says, Your Business Growth Playbook is exactly that. A playbook for smart business owners that helps them avoid the hustle while achieving greater results. Jeremy, is helping entrepreneurs step out of the struggle and into scale. And there's just many, many, many other reviews that have gotten praise from for your book. And it was, first of all, it was cool to be a part of it. And, from the book itself to, the cover book and the cover of the book and everything. What inspired you to write the book? And did you write it just for entrepreneurs, or who did you write it for?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for asking that. It's been an incredibly educational journey. Before you and I hopped in the studio, we were having a conversation and just talking about, personal growth and all the things we learn, right? We're all students of life, growing every day, sometimes not knowing where the journey will be until we jump in there. So if we look back, let me answer a few of your questions here together. The idea for the book has been there for a while, right? There's strategies I've been using with clients and with businesses and in my own businesses for almost 30 years. And I realized when I look back thematically that there's like the same playbook of strategies I draw from, right? There's this 3 variable formula, and there are strategies that you can use to improve each one of those 3 variables in the equation to increase overall revenue and profits in a business. So when I looked at that playbook that was in my mind, I realized like I could codify this. I could put this on paper. And that way, when people are feeling stuck in their business and wanting to get back to growth, there's something they can read that's tactical that they can go use. There's a lot of books, and we've all read these, where they get you excited with the why, and they may even get into the what, but then they kind of hold back and don't actually tell you the how. And as a reader, I always found that frustrating, right? You get all hot and bothered and excited, and then you don't have anything to do with that energy. So for me, the books I've always loved are the tactical ones that show me what to do and tell me the how. So that was really, really important for me to have in this. And this is why Your Business Growth Playbook has that word playbook in there, right? This is like a playbook. You can flip through to the section you need, use one of the strategies, rinse and repeat. And so as I got into this whole book writing journey, I learned a ton. One of the things was, we talk in business about having your ideal customer profile, your ICP, right? Or knowing who your ideal customer is, right? This lets you adjust your marketing copy to them, your products, your services, your languaging, your everything. And so for a book, that's the same thing, But in, book writing parlance, that's what we call your reader profile, knowing who it is you want to read your book. So I knew who that would be, which to your question is an established business owner, right? They've seen success. They have proven sales process, right? People are buying their product, but what got them to where they are now isn't getting them to that next step, right? They've plateaued and they want to get back to growth, and they're looking for that breakthrough. Like, how do I get back to the exciting growth that was so fun and supportive and energizing earlier on in my business and isn't working anymore, right? So I flushed out that profile, and then I did this iterative process we've been talking about. I reached out to my audience and I asked, like, hey, here's what I've got for my reader profile. How does this resonate with you? What did I miss? What do you like? What don't you like? And so on. And I got some really great feedback about a word being confusing or something not being well-defined enough. So for example, I'd originally said this was for founders. And then, I had someone, say to me, like, look, here's founder A, right? They've got, a 9-figure business and, a 100-person team. And here's founder B. They've got, 1 person on their team. Are they both going to use the book in the same way? Like, is that who you're writing for? And so I took the feedback to heart and sort of dialed in all these little pieces for exactly who this is. And then this whole publishing process, writing this book for the audience, has been iterative. Just like we've been talking about with like this MVP of a product and incrementally shipping, instead of just creating a book and shipping it to the world and hoping people like it, I've invited folks to join me on that journey and get early access to that manuscript and start giving feedback and reading the entire manuscript, right? And telling me what's confusing, what's been helpful, right? What their thoughts were, what, they would change, what they didn't like, what was slow, right? What needs more. And so having that feedback before it's ready for an editor was so, so valuable. So by the time it went to an editor, I had a manuscript that had been read by my ideal reader that I'd already gotten the feedback on. So now with a physical book in hand, it's not a first draft. It's been refined by my ideal readers en masse and perfected, and then gone through editing, and then actually, gone and shipped. And the other piece of that, which I love, is all that early feedback I've been getting through that process. These are early reviews. These are people who have enjoyed what they've read and wanted to share that early feedback with me, which I'll tell you, the entrepreneurial journey can be lonely at times, right? Yeah. Especially in the publishing space. We think of writers out, by the lake, typing in a typewriter overlooking, the dock, right?
Right.
It's always solo. Writers are always idealized as a solo pursuit. And so to have people providing feedback has been so supportive and encouraging along the way. And it's validating to know that my message is resonating and that this has been helpful to people. And that's, really helpful to get a launch just right.
Yeah. And it's extremely different than, and I say extremely different because a lot of people say, turn your podcast into a book, but you turn your book, which is not out yet, it will be, and here this September, correct? But you turn your book, your playbook into a podcast. And like that was opposite of what is pretty like not written, but kind of stated. So what made you do that? As opposed to, the other way around. I don't think you had a podcast, so that's one thing.
Yeah. So, I've been invited on to and been a guest on, well over 100 podcasts. And very often hosts will ask me like, well, how come you don't have a podcast?
Right.
And it's not something I was looking to do per se. I've had ideas for podcasts, but, when we're talking about time blocking before, right, it's important to know what it is you want to create and build and what the time commitment will be for that. I'm known for saying no to a lot of things, but when I say yes, I'm saying yes 110%. So like I do a lot of great volunteer work, which the prize for that, by the way, is you get asked to do more volunteer work.
Do more fun, yeah.
Which is wonderful. And I appreciate being asked, but I'm really clear on like, if something is in my area of genius, then yes, I'll make the time and I'll be amazing at that. But if it's kind of off base and you're just looking for a warm body, like there'll be better people who can do a better job and can commit the time. Like save the ask for when I can really over deliver and be really great with that. So in the same way, while working on the book, to also then be putting together a podcast and running my businesses and so on, didn't make a whole lot of sense. and the direction I wanted to go with the podcast wasn't really congruent with what I was working on with the book. But over the summer, things sort of gelled, and I realized that, I now have people using these strategies that I have in Your Business Growth Playbook in their own business. And I know people, past clients, people I've worked with, mastermind members and so on, where they have used the strategies that I talk about in the playbook before as codified, and they've seen great success and breakthroughs in their business. So that's when I realized it kind of clicked. Oh my gosh, what if I bring people on to talk about their journey as a business owner, where they got stuck, and then how they broke through? Because I'm a tactical guy. I like the blueprint and the plan, but I also know a lot of people really like the stories and seeing other journeys and identifying with other people who've been through what they're going through. Because, we listen to podcasts, we hear people's stories and we say, oh my gosh, that was me too. Or I hope that'll be me. Or I'm glad that wasn't me, right? Like we can suddenly connect with stories on a whole nother level. And this is, my way of bringing these tactics to life through people's real world stories or breakthroughs in their very own business.
Yeah. You talk about the left brain and the right brain. In the intro or the first chapter, I'm not really sure. Expound on that a little bit.
Yeah. So some of us connect with stories and we, like a fable, right? Like why do fables exist and why do these stories that have been around for hundreds or thousands of years persist? It's because they're stories that were passed down verbally and then, written down and so on that teach a point. This is how we used to teach, is through stories, because we remember the emotional connection we have to the stories. Right. There's the saying, facts tell, stories sell, right? That the sale is made emotionally, but then justified logically. So for me, like, I enjoy a story, but I tend to make decisions far more logically, and I want to see the playbook and the tactics and all that, right? But I also know that I'm not necessarily my own reader, which, by the way, for our listeners, is a really important lesson. Recognize that typically in your business, you're not your own customer, right? You have so much more knowledge in the stuff you specialize in than your customers probably do. And you can't always speak at your level because that might not be where they are. And you also, by definition of you doing the thing you're doing, would not be the kind of person who would buy the thing that you're offering. So just remember that you're serving an audience that's not you, and you got to speak to what works for them. So stories are a great way to make a point, and then you can reinforce that. So one of the things I do as an author is at the end of each one of the tactics in the playbook, I've got an action box, and it sort of sums up everything you've just read and puts it in the tactics that I like at the end of a chapter in the form of a few questions, right? This is like the coach in me coming out. I ask a few questions that get you thinking about what was just covered in that chapter. So you can read the story, you can see the examples, you can relate to a tactic, and then I give you the thought question to either inspire you to write down the action item of what you'll do, or for you to journal about, or for you to really digest what you've just taken in.
Now, that's important because you're actually not only reading, and reading is great. Reading is fundamental, but you also get the tactics, like you're saying, to really apply some of these strategies. And one of the strategies that you talked about is, let's talk about the first chapter, which is the biggest obstacle to growth and profit. And one of the stories that you used in here was the story of the wagoner and Hercules.
Yeah.
I really like that. Could you expound on that for people so that just expound on that, and then I'll ask later.
Sure. So we've heard the phrase, feeling stuck in a rut before. And, I sort of knew what that meant. But when I was researching, putting things together for the book and found the story of Hercules and the Wagoneer, it all clicked for me, right? So the story is that there's this guy out there. He's got a cart with his two oxen are pulling it, and he's going along on this road. And what do you know? But the cart sort of veers off the road. The oxen, are led astray. Who knows? And the wagon gets stuck in this literal rut on the side of the road. And, the wheel is, jammed up there. And so this wagoneer, the guy who drives this wagon, gets off and is, all distraught because he's literally stuck in a rut. And prays to Hercules. And he's like, help me out. Like I'm stuck in this rut. And so Hercules comes down and looks at this guy who's done nothing to fix his problem, right? He's gotten into a situation that he didn't necessarily put himself into that was out of his control. But instead of doing something about it, he just stops and sort of throws up his hands literally to the sky and is like, help me out of this rut. So Hercules is like, come on, man. Like you didn't even do anything. Like, did you urge your oxen to pull the cart to try and get it forward? Did you lean in and put a shoulder into the cart to kind of push and help them out? Like do something, right? Take action and then I can help you out. And so the wagoner is like, oh, okay. And so he leans in and pushes the cart forward and he's like, come on, oxen, like, let's go, and urges them while leaning into the cart. And then, with that effort, and then, we imagine some help from Hercules, like the cart is freed and is on its way. Mm-hmm. And like the big takeaway for me in all this is like, there are things out of our control, right? Whether that's a changing marketplace or changing customers or just the trends or politics or whatever, right? That you don't control. What we can do is choose how we react. What do we do in that situation? What is the action that we take? Because our best ideas, those don't drive change, right? When we go to a conference, when we hear a speaker, when we watch a video or hear a podcast and we feel great and we feel inspired, that's good. But then what do you do with that? What's the action you take from there? And so if you take your ideas and then put it into action, that's how you see your result. If you lean into that cart and you push it and urge those oxen forward, well, that's how you drive change, is by doing something. So whatever book you read, whatever podcast you listen to, however inspired you are, make sure you write down like what your action plan is and what you plan to get done. And then actually put it on your calendar and block the time to accomplish those things and get them done.
Yeah, it's good to feel good, right? And it's good to feel inspired, but take that inspired to action, make that action an inspired action. And I think that's probably when you have so much to look at and bombarded with so much information. Sometimes I would assert that people don't know what next action to take, whatever it may look like. But I think that you put it together really well. Is like, get your boxes and really tactically look at what's the very next step for you to get, the next thing done. Mm-hmm. And one of the, you talked about where is that? Where is it at? I think it's shiny object, right? The shiny object entrepreneur, where the entrepreneur is like, ooh, that looks good. Ooh, that looks good. Ooh, that looks good. And pretty much all that looks good. It could be good, for a particular person that's looking for a particular thing. But we need to get focused on, what the next step is for us in moving the needle so that we can create growth. And you talk about plateau as well. Can you just go into a little depth about the shiny object mentality and really stopping to really create something for yourself so you can move your business forward?
Yeah, I think there's three sort of gates that every entrepreneur has to get through to have a business, right? And to really be an entrepreneur. Because look, the truth is entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. Like it really is for a select few weirdos out there that should be doing this, right? And that's okay. But like the first thing that I see commonality of entrepreneurs is we see the problem out there. We see the gap in the marketplace. We see what could be better. Whereas I think most folks just accept things at face value for what it is. We see, a problem in an experience that we have as a consumer or that we have in our life. And so that's sort of that first thing, that we see the opportunity. We might be accused of by, friends or spouses or family members, whatever, of being distractible, right? If it was squirrel, you get distracted by the ooh shiny, right? And that's often said as a negative, but almost every entrepreneur that I've worked with or connected with has that aspect. And that's because we see the opportunities, right? Whereas others are just, tunnel vision, we see the opportunities. So that's sort of one. The second thing is that we have an idea for a solution. We see a gap in the marketplace. We have an idea for a marketplace that could be served. But then that second thing is we know what we can do with that. So while some other people might see the problem, they'll complain about it, right? They're not talking about a solution. They'll just talk about the problem.
Mm-hmm.
We entrepreneurs see the problem and create the solution, right?
Yeah.
So that's two things, but none of that matters without the third piece here. And that third is that we take action, right? Some folks are paralyzed by taking action. And so they'll see a problem, they'll create a solution for it, but then they do nothing with it.
Mm.
And until you actually do something to bring your solution to market and solve that problem for people, it's just another idea and none of the rest of it matters. And so that comes back to what we were talking about before, which is take action, not just see the idea, not just, have the solution to it, but do something with it.
Do something with it. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that there are a lot of people who, not a lot, but there are people that see the problem and see a solution to the problem, but they won't take action, like you said. What's stopping them? Do you think it's just fear, or just the lack of understanding of what to do next? What do you think that is? Because I know that there's somebody listening that may be in that situation for themselves.
Yeah. So a big piece of it that I see oftentimes is the fear piece, right? And that's usually the fear of the unknown, right? Or the self-doubt of, can I do something with it? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes the reality is it just gets relegated to the back burner. You feel inspired, you have an idea, and then like life comes calling and you're back to the job and the family and the other obligations. But if you're committed to doing something with it, then it's a matter of creating that plan like we were talking about and starting down the path towards executing that idea and bringing it to market. And the truth is, you're not going to have all the answers, right? No matter how many times I launch a new business, I'm always starting it with a whole bunch of unknowns.
Right, exactly.
When you leave the house, in the car, you don't have all green lights the whole way. You don't know where every construction is going to be, every crosswalk, every, dog crossing the road. You leave anyways, and you start down, and along the way you find out like, oh, there's construction and there's a red light, and oh, school's going. So traffic is, a little slower in the crosswalk, and so on and so on. But that doesn't stop us, because we have comfort with the fact that when we get out on the road, we'll figure this out and we'll get there. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it's about bringing that same confidence into launching a business idea, knowing you don't have all the answers, asking for help, taking that next right step, whatever it might be, and knowing you'll uncover things as you go. When I first went to, to publish my book, I put pen to paper, and man, I was confident. 3-4 weeks, I'd have this thing print to PDF on Amazon, and like the book is done. That's it. And boy, each step of the way, I got a little deeper and realized that no, there's intentionality that goes into writing this and getting that early reader feedback and getting designs done and working with an editor and so on and so forth. Things I didn't know to look out for until I jumped in the deep end.
So you got in, yeah.
Yeah. Every one of my peak life experiences, when I look back, has always come from saying yes to a dumb idea. From jumping in with both feet saying, yeah, let's figure this out, because that bigger picture thing we're talking about, that sounds great. I don't know how I'll get there right now, but I am committed to whatever that bigger idea is. So for our listeners, if you've got that idea for a business, right, flesh it out, right? Start getting some feedback from folks, figure out what that next step is to validate that. But more importantly, look at what you can do to get it to market and have someone say yes to being a customer, right? Yeah. You get a few of those, and you start to get the momentum, and you start to validate the idea. And next thing you know, you look in the rear view and you've got a business and you've got customers and you've got a product, and the rest of the stuff you can figure out as you go.
Yeah. Don't be scared to put yourself out there. Look, I think a lot of people are so addicted to the, being accepted factor, and you got to forget about that.
The first one to accept it needs to be you, right? The rest of the world will catch up with you.
Right. You have a quote I've never heard before. The secret of getting ahead is getting started. The secret of getting started is breaking your complex, overwhelming task into small, manageable task, and then starting on the first one, Mark Twain, right? And that's kind of what we're speaking to. Like, no matter, like you said, what size of the business it is, like really just get started, and don't fear the unknown. Yeah. Just put yourself out there. Right.
Yeah, I mean, we've probably all heard the phrase like, "How do you eat an elephant?" One bite at a time.
Yeah, I didn't hear that before, and then somebody posed that question to me, and I was like, "One bite at a time." I just figured that out, but just so funny that I've never heard that saying before, but that's the only thing that came to mind.
Yeah. Well, we look at anything we want to do, right? And especially if it's bigger, it can be overwhelming. So when you break down to like, what is the minimum piece of value you can ship that you can get out there, right? To move things forward. And so when we talk about like, heading out to the coffee shop or, your separate workspace, whatever it is, and having an idea of like the 1 to 3 things you want to get done, none of those are these big overwhelming tasks like launch business, right? Like that's a big fuzzy thing, right? But when you break it down to like, what is that next thing I can do, you can get that done. And so you've been with me on like this book publishing journey, for example, right? So it's like, great. Well, what are the bigger things I need to get done? Well, we've got to finalize like the book title. That's kind of important. A lot of things block on that, right? That's a manageable task. But even within that, it's like, all right, well, what's the formula for success of what a good book title is? All right, well, what's the research that needs to get done to figure that out? What are the keywords we're going for? Who's the reader profile? Like it all sort of backfills to, let me sit down and dial in my reader profile and get that locked in and get some feedback. Let me write an email out to my list and ask a question about this thing and get that done. Let me do the research on this thing and finish that up before I walk out the door and get that done, right? And each step of the way is the next thing you can do that moves you forward. If you think about like the compartments in a submarine, right? As you go through each one of those compartments, you turn around and you turn that watertight lock behind you and you move forward, right? And then you can open that next one and step through that and close that one up. But if we're not actually finishing things, then we're just starting 1,000 tasks. And until they ship and they get out there, they don't have any value. So we actually want to get things done and ship them and get the value back. Yeah.
And that speaks to scaling business as well, right?
Yeah, very much so.
And you talked about, there's a story that you used. What was it? There was someone, and I wanted to kind of shift into your mastermind. So that's why I use the story. There's a story of someone in the mastermind that didn't know how to, their business has plateaued and they didn't know how to scale it, but they talked to someone in the mastermind. And this is what I want to talk about, which is get yourself connected with other entrepreneurs that are doing things like you, or better than you, or just still, safe. I can't even talk right now. They're facing the same problems and really wanting to grow their business as well. And entrepreneurship, the journey can feel lonely, right? But there are ways to really include other entrepreneurs in your journey, you in their journey, so that you can continue to move forward. And you have the mastermind, and I can't say it's not Baywatch.
What is Bay Area Mastermind, yeah.
Bay Area. I'm sorry. I didn't write it down in my notes. So it's Bay Area Mastermind. And you have, I'm sorry, but you have other entrepreneurs that that are growing from your mastermind. And can you talk about maybe a story that you could share that someone has really grown or got a great outcome from being in your mastermind?
Yeah. So you touched on this idea that I talk about a lot, which is the journey of entrepreneurship is lonely, right? And whatever the journey is that you are going on in your life, whether it's becoming a parent for the first time, whether it's caring for an older family member, whether it's launching a business, whether it's learning to ride bikes, like whatever it is, right? Find or create your community of other people to be around you who are also on that same journey, but naturally will be at different steps or having different experiences, because that's how we learn about not just the things that we want to learn about, right? We don't just get answers to the questions we have. We learn about things we didn't even know existed, knowledge we wouldn't have had before, right? So like knowledge kind of falls into one of 3 categories, right? There's the stuff you know, right? The things you confidently talk about, the things that you can teach on, the things that, you can have a really great conversation around, right? There's the things you don't know. These are the categories of things you search online for, right? The things that you ask people about, that you seek out mentors and experts on, that you find books and courses on, and so forth. Because you don't know it and you want to find an answer. But like the huge giant part of that pie chart is the stuff you don't know.
Right.
So when you surround yourself with people on a similar journey, that's where you find out about all this, is by hearing them share their stories about what's going on, the challenges they're facing, the accomplishments they've had. And you understand about pitfalls that you might have narrowly avoided and you didn't even know it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or that might be ahead of you on this path. And you start to get, answers to questions you didn't know you have. And that is where I've seen growth so often. So I think one of the stories you're alluding to is, we had two business owners across the table from each other in very different businesses, right? One had a brick and mortar retail store and one had an e-commerce business, right? So one's like fully in person and one's fully online. They've both been growing their business and seeing success. They have customers buying from them every single day, right? It's like, that's not a problem, but their growth only got them so far. And by being in that room and talking about what was going on in their business and the wins they were having and so forth, there was this really interesting knowledge transfer, right? So the e-commerce business owner was hearing about this brick and mortar retail store who was using direct mail, right? They were sending out physical mailing to people to get them to come into the store. And that was working. Every time they would send mail out, people came in the store and bought. And they could look at how much was spent on this and how much new revenue came in and see their return on investment, their ROI on the direct mail campaigns. Mm-hmm. Now, the e-commerce guy is running an online business and using pay-per-click and ads and digital media and all these things to bring customers in and using email very successfully, but hadn't even looked at direct mail, didn't even know the term, wouldn't have even known how to start with that, right? Mm. So if you don't even know a channel exists, you can't go looking for answers because you don't even know the right questions to ask.
Right.
And on the flip side, this brick and mortar retail store owner wasn't even collecting email addresses of customers. There was no email list. There was no email marketing to be done, right? Mm-hmm. So simply by these two business owners sharing the strategies that were working, because this e-com guy, right, would send an email and money would come in. He could look at his earnings per click and all these stats and metrics that the retail store owner had never heard of, right? And so just by sharing the strategies over the course of the month between the two meetings, the e-commerce store owner used the best practices that they learned about and bought a list of people who'd never heard of the business before, created a mail piece, worked with a mail house, sent out the direct mail campaign, had new business coming in from new customers in a totally, blue ocean of opportunity, right? And was able to share the results. That brick and mortar retail store owner came back in excited to show that they were now collecting email addresses from customers when they came into the store and building out their list, a permission-based list. They were sending out emails, and when they sent an email out, customers came in the store and bought. So they were adding on incremental new business just by leveraging strategies they learned about in the room that they wouldn't have had the questions or the language to even ask about. They came in looking to solve a problem that was top of mind for them. And what they really got was so much more value by hearing from others sharing about what's going on in their business and what's working well.
How does a person that is in a digital business that may be sending out or trying to accrue emails, but not getting the same result, what steps would they take?
To get better results with their email or to expand beyond that channel?
To get better results with the email.
Yeah. So if we want to nerd out on email marketing, like a common challenge I see is what we call congruency. And this, by the way, applies to all your channels, right? You look at where someone first is exposed to your ad or your brand or something, and the whole journey they go through to becoming a customer and going through your new customer journey, right? At any point that you lose congruency in your messaging, in your marketing, or any of that, you're going to have drop off. So there's an incremental process that I use in looking at any funnel to find like the worst performing parts of it, improve that, rinse, repeat, and so forth, right? Mm-hmm. When we do a funnel evaluation, every funnel has holes in it, and that's actually okay to a certain extent, but there's different strategies we take to fix it. So in your case, if the example you're talking about of emails not getting the engagement, the first point is when someone signs up or opts in to be on that email list. What is it that got them to even give you the email address? And what was the tacit agreement you had for why they got on there, right? So a classic mistake I see is like somebody opts in to get a newsletter, and then you've got like a hard sell email to sell something that's like a different brand. There's totally not congruency there. They wanted a weekly newsletter, and you're now, telling them, hey, go buy this thing from somebody else, right? Like there are ways to do that, but you've lost congruency there. Your highest open rates will be on the weekly newsletter they signed up for, right? Or if someone buys and they're purchasing from you as a customer, and they intentionally tick the box that says, yes, I want to receive offers from you by email. And then you follow up with an offer. Well, they wanted that. They were looking for that. And so you're delivering. So that'll be a higher open rate. All right. So there's what the agreement was to what the email is about, right? But the first point of contact on the email is that subject line, right? Is that subject line matching what you said they would be getting? And then does the subject line flow into what the email is about, right? Is there congruency between the subject line, which is the promise of what they get when they read the email, and then the actual email body? And then we go from what's in the email body to what's the offer or the next step if you're bringing them to your website to buy now, to sign up, to do whatever the action is, your call to action, your CTA. Is that congruent with what the text is? Then they get to the landing page for that. Is that congruent with the email, with the subject line, and so forth? So you can see at any step of the way here, if we don't have congruency, people are going to drop out and you'll have a low conversion point along that step of the way.
Folks, that was worth $1,000 per word. So I hope that people really look at that, listen to that, because I mean, that's what we get when people get when they go to your mastermind group, when they look at like their business and other people's business that, that in areas that their business is working where the others are not. And you talk about unknown in the terms of variables. Is that what that speaks to, or what is that exactly?
Yeah. So the unknown unknowns is really just when you hear from others about what they're working on, right? We generally break everyone's hot seat down to like what's working, what's not, and where you need help, right? So when people share about what's working, these are the wins, right? There's so much to learn from people sharing about, the things they knocked out of the park, because they're sharing the best of the best, what got a result. And generally you can translate that into your business and also get a positive result. They also share about what's not working. And so you learn maybe what not to do, right? You generally also can provide some feedback and ask some good questions. And then where they need help is usually what people come in is looking for that big answer, is what they're looking for. But here's what I find interesting. When people join us for the first time, they're usually coming in to answer one big question, right? Usually they're feeling stuck and they want to get back to growth, or something's not working. They want an answer there. But the pages of notes they get when they leave the room is not from their hot seat or around that one question. It's from what everybody else was sharing. So for our listeners, wherever you are in life and business and so forth, find a way to surround yourself and create or join a community of people also on that journey. That's where you find out about all of these big unknown unknowns. And also, like when you go and you pick up books, like, you and I are both avid readers. This is one of many bookshelves we have around, full of books. Like I enjoy buying books and consuming books and learning from them, because I often learn so much when I pick up a new book, much more than I ever thought I'd get just from that cover alone. But you don't know until you get the book, and you still don't know until you crack the book open, and you still don't know until you actually go through that book. So like each one of those is an incremental step getting you closer to getting value, but you've got to take those individual steps.
The individual steps. You have a ton of knowledge and a ton of skill that people can really learn from. But what lessons from your book that people can apply now, or when they get your book, from anyone who wants to thrive, and not just entrepreneurs, but people who may feel like they're plateaued in their career?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So you may have had this experience yourself where there's a book on your bookshelf you find yourself drawn back to, many years later, and you crack it open and you start reading it again, and you're like, whoa, like who came in here when I wasn't looking and like put this new chapter in? Like this wasn't here the last time I read the book. And like it absolutely was. It just didn't speak to you at that time in your life. It didn't mean something to you. You didn't need it. Right. So when you go back and you reread a book again, you find there's new value there, right? When you go back and you listen to a podcast episode you heard before, and you're just at a different place in life or in business, there's more value there than you got the first time, right? So So don't always view something as one and done. You can go back to courses, books, things that the knowledge you've brought into your life. There's so much untapped knowledge in there. Go back, rinse, repeat. And I was really intentional when I put your business growth playbook together to have this broken out. There's 3 big sections, one for each of the 3 variables in my formula, right? And within those are tons of strategies that can adjust the lever in each of those 3, those 3 pieces. So when you go through, take an iterative approach, right? Apply one tactic, get a result, right? Measure it is really important, and then come back and apply a different strategy. And we repeat this. And there's a story I share in the book about the British cycling team. They were terrible. They consistently lost as a cycling team on the global race scene for decades until they brought in this new head coach who was all about what we call incremental gains. So he tests little things to get a result. Some things worked, some things didn't, but it was all these little small things. But each of these little changes can make a 1% difference. And when you start stacking these little 1% differences, right? Whether this was his players washing their hands before they eat. Sounds simple, but wouldn't you know, if you're a competitive athlete and you get sick, that can set your training back weeks. And so it seems like a small change, but does having the team wash their hands before they sit down and eat make a difference? And what do you know? It does, right? Little things about changing nutrition or changing hydration or changing, what they fuel and when, right? Changing the seat position, the seat height, the, what they use for wheels and bars, all these little variables, they were always testing, looking for these little 1% gains.
Yeah.
But those have this compounding effect that they build on each other. And then you look in the rear view that just by testing things out, you can move forward a little bit at a time. So come back to your business growth playbook, apply a tactic, right? And then rinse and repeat. Don't be afraid to try things, because that's how you find out what works and what doesn't. And it's okay if something doesn't work. Yeah. It's better to fail fast and learn that, and then come back and apply something else and go from there.
If you fail fast and just bounce back with the experiments. I know you did talk about, you have 3 levers, however you want to pronounce it, in your book. I didn't know if you wanted to go through that real quick, or if you wanted to, it's good. If not, it's okay.
Well, we can touch on a high level, right?
Yes.
When we look at this really important metric to look at in any business, right? I don't care what kind of business you have, this metric matters. It's customer lifetime value, or CLV, right? And this is what a customer is worth revenue-wise to your business over their lifetime of doing business with you. So whatever business model you have, there is a customer lifetime value there. And you may think, but I only have, one transaction with a customer and that's it. Well, I've worked with many businesses that could only transact one time, and we found many ways to increase that customer lifetime value, right? And there's 3 variables that go into that. Improve any one of those, right? You multiply F by A by Q. If you improve any one of those, that's a multiplicative result, right? You are multiplying the impact, right? So for example, a simple strategy most folks overlook is this idea of raising your prices. It feels silly, right? But when you raise the price, that raises how much someone spends when they do business with you.
Right.
And what so many of us forget is that the price we charge is a perceived value that we have in our mind that a new customer doesn't know about until they see us for the first time, right? So whatever pricing model you have is probably stuck in years ago when you set that pricing model up and you never thought to revisit. So what would happen if you were to increase your prices? Right? Well, first you've got to become comfortable with that idea, or step out of the comfort zone and do it anyways, right? But then we test. I'm not saying go to all your existing customers and say, guess what? You're going to pay us more money now, even though as consumers, we're used to companies doing that regularly, right? So you can do that, but you can test it out on your landing page. Split test your traffic. Some of your traffic sees a different price, and some sees your traditional pricing. And does that change things? What I can say is, experimentally, very often changing your pricing doesn't often impact the conversion rates, which means you've left money on the table for all the time it took you to become comfortable with the idea of raising your price. Now, you can't raise it beyond a certain limit, right? And we don't know what that is until we experiment, because then you do start to hurt conversions. Sometimes, though, a price increase actually increases conversions because of a perceived value, right? Your customers view you as a more premium brand, right? So all that aside, if we just take simple numbers, and let's say you got a subscription business, let's say you charge $40 a month and your profit margin is $10, right? So it costs you $30 to service this customer that's paying you $40 all in, and your profit margin that you clear off, that's $10 a month, right? Easy numbers. Let's say we experiment and we bring that for a new customer to $50 a month. Mm-hmm. That's not that big of a deal, right? We have, a 25% price increase. That's not huge for a new customer who's never seen your business before. They probably wouldn't know or feel a difference. So let's just say you have the same conversion rate. But what does that mean for the profit margin? It costs you nothing more to get that customer or to service them. Yeah. So even though the overall price only went up 25%, your profit margin just doubled. It went up 100%. Mm-hmm. Now you're seeing $20 of profit a month instead of the 10. Meaning you could actually convert far fewer customers and still have the same or more profit in the business. So your gross sales can go up incrementally, your profit margin can go up dramatically, and you can have a smaller customer base to serve while you're making more money overall, right? Mm-hmm. So that's like a simple change you can make that many business owners overlook in their business.
Right. That's detail. And I think that anybody who's listening and that has a subscription business or just a business at all that has product, we could really just take that little piece right there and apply it to their life and start to see conversions and a higher profit margin for themselves. And we could go on and on and on. And I want to first appreciate your skill and appreciate what you bring to a conversation and to people's lives, right? It really makes a difference. If people just sit and listen to what you have to share, it really makes a difference for entrepreneurs and people who are just probably, and you will use the word plateaued in their lives or what have you. But as we come to a close on this session, what's one thing that's on your heart or your mind that you would like to share as your last words on the podcast this time? Because I'm sure you'll be back.
The world can be a big, scary place. And it's mostly full of unknowns. There's very, 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 very little we actually know about the world around us, right? And that's okay. Like we have all survived that as humanity for a very long time. And you can too. Don't let that fear of the unknown get in the way of you stepping out the front door in the morning, right? Of launching that business, of trying out that new sales channel, of taking a chance on, a business partner or a new product idea or whatever it is, right? We've all heard nothing ventured, nothing gained. There's a lot of truth in that. Just be mindful of how you mitigate your risk, because we can never really eliminate risk. We can just mitigate it. So take that step boldly forward, understand how to mitigate your risks, but be okay doing something to ship some incremental value out there to grow yourself personally or grow that business. But take action is really what that all comes down to.
But take action. Jeremy, I can't thank you enough for coming back on the podcast and sharing your insights, your skill, your wherewithal and understanding of business and business growth. And in your book, people just need to get it when it comes out. But people can get the first chapter now. And how do people get in contact with you and get that first chapter so they can begin to really shift their business?
Yeah. So if you head to yourbusinessgrowthplaybook.com, you can actually get access to the book early. We get a PDF out to you so you can see, what this book is. You'll also find pre-order links online as well as order links for our listeners, listening later on to buy the book. But for sure, we talked about funnels. When you come to yourbusinessgrowthplaybook.com, that's your opportunity to opt in to get early access PDF, be part of our community of like-minded entrepreneurs and business owners, and start that relationship to get you unstuck and back to the growth that we all deserve.
Yeah, I love it. And it's been an eye-opener and just a way of raising my understanding of businesses as well, just being connected to you and what you have. Again, I mean, it's amazing. So just know that for yourself, and I'm sure you do, but just know that from my perspective, that's what you have to offer. So Jeremy, thank you for being here on the ThriveWell Journey. And I wish all success to you and your book. And as we always say, let's make thriving our new normal. And we'll see you next week.
Love it. Thanks for inviting me on, and always great chatting with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Before you go, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being a part of the ThriveWell Journey. Every time you show up here, you're choosing growth, clarity, and the deeper work of becoming who you're meant to be in this world. And if you're ready to reconnect with what truly lights you up, I created something powerful that can help you. It's called the Empowered Path, 7 days to reclaim your purpose and passion. It's a beautifully designed, guided workbook that walks you through a week of powerful prompts, clarity building tools, and real mindset shifts. Now, you can get instant access to it today. It's a small investment for a huge return. Your energy, your clarity, your alignment. And if you want to take it deeper, check this out. I'm offering a limited number of free 30-minute purpose coaching sessions. No pressure, no pitch, just space for you to reconnect with your direction, your gifts, and what's next. So you can grab the guide and book your session at the link in the show notes. Let's not just go through the motions. Let's really walk this path on purpose. I appreciate you. And like we always say, let's make thriving our new normal. And I'll talk to you soon.